إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to MTA International Africa. We are coming to you from the Wahab Adam Studios in Ghana. This is Islam and Science, a program that looks at the relations between science and Islam. Today we are looking at the topic of genetic engineering, and with me in the studio is our regular guest, Dr. Abdallah Dawood of the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. Doctor, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Hanif Bipwa, the Vice President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Organization of Ghana.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Our topic of discussion today is on the scientific activity of genes, the scientific activity dealing with genes, which you term as genetic engineering. Dr. Abdallah, what is genetic engineering?
Genetic engineering is an aspect of science and engineering put together. It deals with biological issues, biological components or tissues. So basically, it is the process of manipulating or altering the gene or the DNA of an organism so that a certain characteristic or behavior is achieved.
What is that gene? What is that DNA?
DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a complex chemical compound that make up the chromosome of every organism. So it is the nature of the organ. It defines the nature, or if you like, you can say it is the fingerprint of that organism. So every organism has a unique DNA that defines the organism. Okay. So what genetic engineering does is that it can manipulate by extracting or interpolating this DNA so that a certain desired behavior or characteristic is achieved. And it's used in diverse sense, in research, in agriculture, in technology, etc. So its application is wide.
So are you saying that the way I look because of something called gene in me? And,
yes.
So the genetic engineering is then trying to modify?
It can modify.
Okay.
It can modify.
How long have this been in practice?
Historically, genetic engineering started in the 1930s by a scientist called Herbert Boyer. So he, together with his colleagues Stanley and Cohen, they did some tests in the laboratory on technology, genetic technology. And then later on in the 1970s, a more detailed work was done. So eventually they started a company called Genetech, where they were producing certain biological, biological molecules, so that those things can be used to manipulate or cause effective change in the genes of organisms.
Okay. That's interesting. 1930s. We are almost getting to 100 years. Yeah. 90 years ago.
So it has been with us for some time, and we have had a lot of applications out of that.
That's great. But Mr. Hanif, you always say Islam has covered everything. There's nothing in science that Islam have not talked about. This was almost 90 years ago. Islam was 1,400 years ago. Do we have any hint of this from your perspective?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam.
Most definitely, Islam, as we know, is all-encompassing. And the Holy Quran, we know to be the word of Allah, most definitely would not have skipped or failed to discuss this area of genetic engineering. Now, the Holy Quran does capture it in a very interesting manner, and it's quite straightforward. This was an assurance Satan was given to Allah in the Holy Quran, chapter 4, Surah Al-Nisa, verse 120. And I quote, this is said by Satan, "Assuredly, I will lead them astray," and by them, Satan meant the people that Allah created, human beings, humanity. "I will lead them astray, and assuredly, I will incite them vain desires. I will incite in them vain desires. And assuredly, I will incite them, and they will cut the ears of cattle. And assuredly, I will incite them, and they will alter Allah's creation. And he who takes Satan for a friend, besides Allah, has certainly suffered a manifest loss." Now, clearly, from this portion of the Holy Quran, two specific things have been mentioned. That assuredly, he will lead them astray. This is what Allah has said. Yeah. I mean, this is what the Quran has said. Satan has assured Allah. And in leading them astray, Satan has mentioned that he will cause them to cut the ears of cattle and alter the creation of Allah. Listening to my brother, the scientist, you clearly realize that he's talking about manipulating genes of organisms. And learning from what he has said, genes essentially are controlling the activities that living things undergo, their appearances, their functions, their behavior. Everything is controlled by genes. So if it is said that Satan is going to influence them to manipulate these genes or these organisms, clearly this is about genetic engineering in the Holy Quran, that Satan is going to cause them to try to alter the creation of Allah. Now again, you look at the ears of cattle, it is talking about cause them to cut the ears of cattle. It's another changes in the appearance of an organism that Allah has created, by which, from what my brother has said, the genetic engineers will attempt to bring about creatures or cattle with shorter ears. And yes, I do believe that this portion of the Holy Quran is all encompassing about what genetic engineering is going to bring to bear on humanity. And it's in the Holy Quran. This is obvious. 1,400 years ago.
That is really wonderful that 1,400 years ago, a prediction could have been. No wonder it is coming from God.
Yes, that's true.
Such a prediction was so clearly stated, and it is happening now.
Yes.
If I listen to you well, the verse you quoted, Satan seems to be threatening mankind on this. So, Dr. Saib, do we say that genetic engineering is safe?
Yeah, from scientific viewpoint, anything we do in the realm of science can be safe and it can be destructive. And depending on who is involved and what is involved and the intention behind what is being done. And so genetic engineering, yes, it can be destructive, it can be safe. It can be safe in the sense that if it is used with the right intention, with the intention to create in order to resolve problems, in order to deal with medical defections in organisms, then it is good. Typically, let's look at the use of insulin. Insulin is produced in the human body in the pancreas. Okay. Now, what the function of insulin is, it is in metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, protein, etc., and also regulates the sugar level in the blood. So basically, this is the core function of the insulin. But people with certain conditions, let's say a diabetic patient, have problem of producing their own insulin. And such condition will mean that their sugar level can go high, it can go overboard, and which can even cause death. And so where genetic engineering comes in here is that it now has to produce a pseudo-insulin
So genetic engineering was used to extract insulin from bacteria. And now used in treating
diabetes. So it is even registered with a trade name Humulin. So those in the medical sector know this and they use it. And another positive benefit that we get from genetic engineering is dealing with food insecurity or food security. We know that there are certain parts of the world where food production is on the low, whilst the population is increasing. And to be able to match or to meet the population with food production, there is the need to have varieties of food crops with high nutritional values, food crops that are able to withstand pests and disease-causing organisms. And here also genetic engineering comes in. It's able to produce varieties of food crops that are of high nutritional value, that are able to also withstand living organisms that cause diseases. And so that is another benefit we get from there. And also, it's also used to deal with a certain medical condition that is known as cystic fibrosis, where a sheep was genetically modified. A genetically modified sheep was made to produce.
You mean the animal
milk.
sheep?
The animal sheep was made to produce milk that is has certain function of being able to deal with cystic fibrosis. And so, if we look at genetic engineering in this sense, then it is safe. However, like I said earlier, it can also be destructive because there are a lot of uncertainties surrounding genetic engineering, because a lot of gray areas that we have not unraveled yet. And so the uncertainties are some of the problems that genetic engineering can have on us.
That's really interesting, that genetic engineering have given us useful benefits, but the way the Holy Quran is cautioning us that Satan will be the one to incite us to do this, and Allah is warning us that if anyone takes Satan for a friend, you will be at a loss. Does that not preempt some dangers with this genetic engineering? Sadusai.
Yes, my brother, indeed. Listening to my scientist friend, I think that it's a cause to worry. And it's not as if Islam has not preempted this. Just as the Holy Quran has spoken about genetic engineering in those terms, where Satan had already assured the misguided human beings that he's going to lead them into certain aspects of genetic engineering. I think it can be understood in a context. Clearly, it is not all aspects of genetic engineering that the Holy Quran will be talking against or that we should be afraid about. If you listen to Dr. Munir Sahib, you will realize that he outlined some very good aspects of genetic engineering. The Holy Quran does say that human beings were created to worship Allah. That was the purpose of creation of Allah. For that matter, if scientists are engaged in genetic engineering to further this cause, I think it's a noble cause, and they would indeed be blessed. They will reap manifold blessings from their activities of genetic engineering. For instance, if you take a scientist engaging in genetic engineering, thereby producing insulin and other, as he would put them, biomolecules that are useful for human beings and, for that matter, treatment of diseases. It's useful, and there is nothing more than gaining the ability to treat diseases, life-threatening diseases. You would agree with me that Islam does talk about the need to acquire knowledge, and that if even knowledge is as far as in China, we should strive to get to China and acquire that knowledge. The scientists have been able to acquire this knowledge on genetic engineering, and if they are using it in the cause of Allah, as in helping human beings to survive and live better lives that they can use to worship Allah, then I think it is perfect. Again, another very important thing he said genetic engineers are doing are the engineering of food products, or for that matter, food organisms that human beings threatened with famine are able to survive on. It is helping in taking care of food insecurity in the world. This is very good, clearly, because if genetic engineering can alleviate the pain of hunger in human beings, this is the cause of Muslims and Islam, for that matter. So if genetic engineering can do this, it doesn't go contrary to the dictates of Islam and, for that matter, the Holy Quran. So I think that what I'm finding out from the story about genetic engineering is that it has its good aspects and it may have its bad aspects, which I believe he will know more about. But clearly, if genetic engineering is used for the good cause, Islam does allow it, and the Holy Quran does support it.
But which of the causes do you say are not good?
Yes, I have read a bit casually around this genetic engineering in order to see how it conforms with Islam, and I have come to realize that genetic engineering has equally been used in a manner that may be questionable and very risky, a course that scientists are veering off to that we cannot predict. What are the reasons? I found out about designer babies.
Designer babies?
Designer babies.
But we have designer clothes.
Interesting.
Designer babies.
You see that. So in the same vein that you have designer clothes, we have designer babies. And taking it from where you left off, what are the purpose of designer clothes? It's normally to gratify their own vain desires, that you have to keep designing clothes for no other reason. Now, the term designer babies, if you read around it, talks about creating or recreating certain characteristics in babies before they are born. So they are saying that they can control the eye color of the baby, the skin color, the hair color, everything. So they are preempting whatever baby is going to be born by the mother from the onset, at the point of the embryo developing. This is clearly a vain thing that scientists are engaging in, designing babies. For what reason? Quite apart from that, it's not only the designer babies challenge we have. You'll find out that genetic engineers are also in the field of creating embryos. And currently, I just read that in 2016, 2017, some scientists in China have been able to clone babies as in embryos of human beings, and their intention was to use those embryos to toggle around and do scientific experiments in order to discover cures to diseases. Yes, it may be a good cause that they want to find cures to diseases, but these are human lives, for God's sake, they are toggling around with, and these should be handled with honor because they have souls in them. So they shouldn't be handled in so much unethical manner as creating human beings and using them as lab rats. These are some of the ways that I don't think are conforming to Islam.
That's really interesting. I think that's a direct relation. That has a direct relation to what the Holy Quran is saying, trying to alter the creation of Allah. Because if a baby is in the womb and you are trying to change the eye color before it comes out, you are trying to change what Allah has created.
That's right.
And that's really interesting that Islam could have predicted that 1,400 years ago, and we are now seeing it after 2,000.
Yes.
That's really interesting. But the question of safety is still important, even if we take away the uncertainties concerning the vain attempts to create new things out of Allah's creation. But even the good ones that we are creating, you talked about the use of it in food, in agriculture. We often hear debates concerning genetically modified organisms, GMOs. People are saying, how do you take bacteria into agriculture? Are we safe consuming these things? Do we have the full knowledge that, yes, this is okay for us to do?
Yeah, to a large extent, Regarding safety of, let's say, food crops that are genetically produced or modified, I can say that for now, till now, there is no proof or evidence of their unsafetyness. Okay, so we have no, cause, to worry about. But the uncertainty still come to bear because there are areas that we have not yet unraveled. For instance, there may be certain characteristics that we will not be able to handle or deal with when they come to bear or when they come to play as a result of, producing some of these organisms. And so these are some of the gray areas. For instance, we scientists, normally deal with characteristics. And most of the characteristics are things that have played again and again and again. And so you know that this set of characteristics are the behavior of this set of organisms. Okay, so now moving to, an era where we are now, facing characteristics that are unknown to us, behaviors that are unknown to us, especially, let's say, with regards to the cloning of human beings. Such human beings, are they going to possess the same characteristics, the same behavior? Are they going to have the same conscience as we have? Those we cannot tell, those we don't know. And these are some of the risks that we are still contemplating.
But briefly, you are mentioning the word cloning. How is it related to the topic we are discussing?
Cloning is a subject of genetic engineering.
Okay.
It's just like trying to have a pseudo organism of a natural organism.
A false organism?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you can say so.
Okay. That's really interesting. Yes. Sadr Saib.
Yes.
So he has given us an application of genetic engineering that he referred to as cloning. What can you add to that?
Yes, cloning, like he said, is one of the applications of genetic engineering. And cloning is really no strange thing, even though it normally sounds scary to people. Reason being that cloning is something that has been going on in the natural and in the artificial. In the natural, a lot of plants undergo cloning because they are asexual reproducers. So the meaning of cloning is photocopies. To clone means to replicate the same. Hence, if you take a plant and it has a certain ability to produce a lot of food, you would want to clone it in order to get more of the food. And this is a positive application of genetic engineering.
So when they are doing breeding in plants,
fish and plants and all
that's all cloning.
Essentially, that is it.
Okay, that's interesting to me.
And that brings to mind a certain hadith that the Holy Prophet was reported to have indicated his approval for grafting. When some of his companions had indicated to him that the dates they were supplying to him was due to grafting, which he once upon a time was not too certain about. So when he heard it was true grafting, he permitted. He said, then it's for a good cause. Grafting is one method of cloning because the plant from which you take the portion from, that is the apical bud, and insert into another plant, essentially we are replicating the produce from that previous plant. You get it?
That's interesting.
So, but the cloning, and again, animals, lower animals like insects and lizards and some other organisms are able to do cloning through parthenogenesis, what we've heard, parthenogenesis. Essentially one organism reproducing another organism without
from itself, without another organism coming to add.
Exactly.
Normally, is that done?
It's done. It happens in insects like the aphids, and lizards like the Komodo lizard, and many other organisms, but they are normally lower organisms. But this brings to mind the fact that there's a certain principle Allah has created that allows for cloning. This is natural, and it helps us to get food and to get a whole lot of other things. But there's artificial cloning.
Okay.
And
Before you go to the artificial, the natural cloning, could it have explained the birth of Christ?
that is why I'm saying this is an interesting principle that it brings to bear, that it is possible. However, we are not sure about human beings yet. It's another topic for another day. But importantly, the aspect of cloning that scares us is the human cloning or the prospects of human cloning. And my brother, the scientist, did state that assuming you clone a human being with a very weird mentality, and you know the brain is a factor of what you are, your genes. So if you cloned a crazy mad human being, you are making more mad people. You don't know what they'll drive the world to. So cloning is one of the scientific applications of genetic engineering, and is accepted if, like we already laid the principle, it goes for the cause of Allah. It makes life better. But if it raises issues as in danger, then we have to pull the brakes and follow the ethics of science and religion for that matter.
Thank you very much. Dr. Saib, in concluding this discussion, he's talking about ethics and guiding principles. Do we have any such principles within the scientific realm that scientists can follow in order to make genetic engineering safe?
Yes, indeed, there are. In medical science, there are ethics in, all sectors of science, in all branches of science. So it is in genetic engineering. And so principally, you are required to do things in a certain manner so that you don't invoke or you don't, invite harm to the human society or to the larger environment. And so, we have certain rules and principles within which we operate as scientists, whether in the medical field or in the chemical or in the biochemical field. We play according to laid down principles and set of rules.
And you are certain that these principles can ensure that we are within the realms of safety when it comes to genetic engineering.
And it is, these principles are iterative in the sense that every now and then there are conventions, there are conferences where experts meet, and when we meet, we discuss things pertaining to the changing issues, things that are happening now. And so if there is the need to update or to entrench or to fortify the rules, we do so during these conferences, and they become binding on every member of such societies.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hanif, in Islam, we know that the Holy Quran never cautioned without giving a guidance. Do we have any guidance from your perspective as to how this whole thing can remain safe?
Yes, so indeed, the Holy Quran has said in chapter 3, verse 103, that the believers should fear Allah as he should be feared. And this brings to mind the fact that the world has to fear Allah as he should be feared. And in order to fear Allah, you must follow the guidance from the Khalifa of the time, or Khilafat for that matter. I know one of the guiding principles to the scientists is legislations or laws. Laws are made by countries. But interestingly, one of the source of law is the books of Allah. A lot of countries indeed do rely on the Holy Quran and the Bible to make laws. So it is my belief that if human beings let fear of Allah lead them and also follow the divine guidance of Allah to make their laws, then it can keep in check what the scientists are in the process of doing at the moment.
Thank you very much. Viewers, this is where we'll draw the discussion to a close on this interesting topic. With me in the studio have been Dr. Abdallah Munir Dawood of the Ghana Atomic Energy. Doctor, thank you for always being here for Islam and Science.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And Mr. Hanif Bipwa, the Vice President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Organization of Ghana. Thank you for tuning in to Islam and Science on your favorite channel, MTA International Africa. Till we come your way again next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam.